welcome back to the evolution of horror. My name is Mike, and as ever, I am your host. If you're tuning in for the first time, then welcome. In this podcast, we explore and dissect the evolution of the horror genre by looking at particular subgenres across several weeks. We are currently in the middle of exploring the evolution of folk horror, and we are approaching the end. This is going to be part 2 of our Also Ran's extravaganza. Last week, I was joined by Giles Edwards, and he provided a list of recommendations of folk horror movies that we haven't covered on the series that were released in the 20th century. And now, this week, we're moving forward into the 21st century, and we, once again, are going to be going through a list of spoiler-free recommendations for some of the more modern folk horror movies that we haven't had a chance to cover in depth. So, as before, this will be a complete spoiler-free episode. Lots to get through this week, but before we get started, here are a few contact details. You can email us. The email address is evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. Don't forget, you can find us on Twitter @evolutionpod or on Facebook. That's facebook.com/evolutionofhorror. In a couple of weeks' time, it's going to be the last episode in our current series, and that's an episode where I really like to be able to read some listener feedback. So please do get in touch if you can at some point in the next couple of weeks. Tell me what you thought of this series in general. Has it been interesting? Has it been informative? Have you learned anything more about folk horror or what folk horror is? Or are you just as baffled as you were at the beginning? And also tell me a little bit about some of your favourite folk horrors. I'm going to be listing the listeners' top 10 folk horrors. So I really want to know what your favourite is and why. Send me that and any other correspondence. Once again, that email address is evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. So let's get started. Lots to cover this week. Joining me to discuss all things 21st century folk horror. This is his second time on the podcast. He was here last series discussing The Woman in Black. He is an actor. He's currently starring in one of the biggest shows in the West End in London at the moment. And I'm thrilled to have him back here with me, the brilliant Stevie Webb. Stevie, hello.
I'm back, bitches.
You're back. How have you been?
Excellent, thank you.
Good,
Well,
good,
I
good.
mean, up and down,
Up and
like
down.
every other human being.
It's been about 8 months, hasn't it? So
It
you've
has,
probably had a
yeah.
few up and downs. Yeah.
But right now I'm excellent.
Good to know. Lovely. So, last time you were here, we were talking about The Woman in Black, like the most quintessential ghost story you can possibly get. This week, obviously, it's a little bit different. We've got like quite a range of stuff to discuss.
We cross a certain spectrum.
Yeah, we do. We really do. So, folk horror, generally speaking, I know it's a very broad spectrum, but what are your thoughts on folk horror? Are you a fan of this subgenre? This is when you're going to say, no, I hate it.
No, I don't hate it
Okay.
at all. I'm up and down.
Yeah.
If I'm really honest, the more traditional folk horror, I'm not massive fan of.
Yeah.
The stuff
Yeah.
we're going to talk about today, the more modern spin on them, I'm absolutely down for.
Yes.
But I've seen The Wicker Man and I appreciate it. I have to admit, I've not seen Blood on Satan's Claw.
Yeah, well, it's quite a niche. I mean, I don't think that many people had seen it, up until suddenly Mark Gatiss made it a thing. And,
Right, sure. Yeah, quite. But yeah, Witchfinder General, for instance, I just...
Yeah.
I think I'd rather watch Ghoulies Go to College.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's fair enough, yeah. And whether or not these are all folk horror, but we've gone pretty broad. We've also talked about things like Texas Chainsaw, Hills Have Eyes, Hicksploitation.
Exactly, that sort of stuff I'm very much
more
down
your
for,
bag.
yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, obviously, as with all subgenres, there are so many hundreds of movies to cover that this is our chance to kind of mop up a few that have, recent ones, like you say. And it is interesting because we've got a list of 10, haven't we, that we've sort of narrowed it down to. But it feels like, I think, looking at the list, there's about the first half of them are sort of spread sort of sporadically across the first sort of decade of the millennium.
Yeah.
And then we've got 5 that all came out within sort of a couple of years, basically.
Absolutely. There was a bit of a rush,
Yeah, that we seem to be sort of in the midst of now. A lot of people kind of talk about a sort of folk horror resurgence and that kind of thing. What do you think it is about folk horror that's... I don't know, it seems to be back right now. It seems to be very popular right now,
Yeah,
doesn't
you're
it?
right. Actually, we'll be talking about a couple of the movies. I think it's something that just hasn't been touched on for such a long time, and there's something very human about it that gets you. I find it puts me on edge because it's usually about an aggressive pack mentality of human beings, which is the most dangerous and tangible threat. Like Hello Hitler. It's that. I think that human threat.
Yes.
And I think we just seem to be.
I mean, I wonder whether that is a bit of a real threat at the moment, so in a really terrifying way in the world,
absolutely,
isn't it?
Yeah, totally. It does reflect what's going on at the moment, I think.
Yeah. And also, I guess it's just away from the kind of real life stuff. It's just these things do go in waves, don't they, in cycles? And
of course.
I think, when you had movies like The Witch, and then suddenly it's like,
it's its time.
Yeah, it's its time again.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Everyone to the woods.
Everyone to the woods, exactly. Grab your axe and grab your animal to slaughter or something.
Exactly. Hold on to your kids.
Yes, exactly. Oh my God, I know. Do you find them scary, these types of movies?
I do because of that, because of the realistic vibe of these humans that could harm you, and especially when you feel unwelcome or when you're in the wrong place.
Yes.
It's a terrifying thing that we can all relate to.
Yes.
And I think it's that actually scares me.
Yeah.
The fear for the outsider.
Yeah, exactly.
Which we've all been.
Exactly that, yeah. And we've got, and like you said, that there's kind of two camps of folk horror, it feels like. And if you look at The Wicker Man and Blood on Satan's Claw, that's a kind of perfect example, because The Wicker Man is about people, beliefs, like you say, group mentality. It's that scary kind of, I'm in a trap.
Yeah.
Blood on Satan's Claw is very much like a folk tale. It's like it's a period set, people living in villages in the woods, and a monster takes over. And it's very much like a piece of folklore.
Right.
And again, I think that we've got 10 movies to discuss.
Our list is exactly that.
Yeah, they kind of fall into one of two camps, don't they? And that's why folk horror is a bit of a weird one. It's not just about a ghost or a slasher. It's like, it can be basically as long as there's woods involved, I think.
I think that's pretty much all you need.
It is weird, isn't it? Is there a common thread between these 10 films that we're going to discuss?
Well, it's normally just something like capitalists take a wrong turn and disturb socialists with disastrous consequences, pretty much.
That pretty much sums it up, yeah. And we've got, again, we'll go into them in a minute, but we've also got like quite a range of, we've got some British stuff, some Irish stuff. You've got English, Scottish, Irish. You've got some French or Belgian stuff.
Yeah.
We've got a Korean film. We've got American stuff. Again, do you kind of see? Can you kind of see the fingerprints of different countries on the different sort of folk horrors?
I think you can a little bit. I think personally, I think the Irish folk horror are a little more fantastical sometimes. Have that more magical element.
Yes.
Whereas French, Korean, for instance, is much more realistically upsetting, I find, and unnerving.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. And often American as well, actually, can again, going down that kind of exploitation route, they can be a bit more that way inclined, I think. I
totally agree with that. I've put them in the same camp.
Yes. Amazing. So, first of all, thank you very much for sitting down to watch 10 movies this week in preparation for this.
I loved it. And some I hadn't seen, but some I absolutely loved revisiting.
Amazing. I can't wait to hear all your thoughts. So we're going to go through them one by one. We'll go in chronological order, shall we? That's kind of always the easiest way.
The beginning.
We'll start from the beginning. These are all going to be, we'll stay spoiler free on all of them. So we'll just kind of briefly
I'll do my best.
Talk a bit about them. Yeah, I know, as best we can. Speaking of spoilers then, let's begin with the first one.
I was going to say, what I want to start with.
What I want to start with. So this is M. Night Shyamalan's The Village.
Never enter the woods. That is where they wait.
That game the boys play at the stump. They put their backs to the woods and see how long they can wait before getting scared.
Let the bad color not be seen. It attracts them.
This color is not allowed. You must bury it.
Heed the warning bell, for they are coming.
I heard their breathing. It was a dreadful sound. Our days of peace are over.
Right, it's set in an isolated and idyllic self-sustaining village in the 19th century America. The village is completely surrounded by a forest that houses, quote-unquote, those we don't speak of, which are creatures that have made a pact with the villagers. If you don't bother us, we won't bother you. But of course, the rules are broken, and the village's peaceful settlement begins to fall apart.
Oh, lovely.
I did that myself.
Did you?
What do you think?
Do you know,
because I didn't want to give it too much away.
Brilliant. I've prepared just in case, I feel like I should, at least try and be useful when I do this. So I prepare, documents with IMDb synopses and stuff.
Yeah.
But you've absolutely blown the IMDb one out of the water there.
I even wrote that down.
So good.
Great.
I mean that's a good setup, isn't it? Because so the first thing we should say, if you haven't seen this, it's directed by M. Night Shyamalan. So as with all of his films, it's like, things aren't always quite what you expect, and there's a lot of mystery to this movie, and there are surprises along the way and stuff, aren't they?
I mean, well, that's what you've come to expect from it. I am a fan, and
yes, me too.
It's not saying you know what you're going to get, but you can expect a well-written, original, intense story with an unexpected twist at the end. That's the basic
exactly.
premise for most of his films.
Exactly. So this film in particular, because I remember, this came off the back of, he did The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable,
The Signs, and then this.
All very slightly diminishing reactions, I think, each one.
Yeah.
People still liked Signs, but you could tell that people were eye-rolling by the end, even though I love Signs. But
it's Unbreakable and Signs are tied number one for me.
Me too. And then it feels like The Village was when the tide started to turn with him a bit. And yeah, but what are your thoughts on The Village? Do you like it?
I get it. I get why. I think because The Village, the other three are much more thriller, suspense, supernatural.
Yes.
And this is a complete different turn for him, which I absolutely love.
I do as well.
And the twist, it's so weird. I know we're being spoiler free, but it's hard for me to think of anyone that doesn't know, even if you've seen the film or not, every single twist in Shyamalan's films.
Yes.
It used to be a sport to ruin them for people.
Yeah, it did.
I remember 15 years ago, that was the thing.
It was like early trolling, that was.
Yeah,
wasn't
totally. Yeah, you literally, and maybe that's why the opening weekends were so big. People just didn't want it ruined.
Totally.
Didn't want someone going, he's dead the whole time.
Yes, exactly. Which, FYI, isn't the Village twist.
Oh, no, that's not The Village. I really, really like it because it reminds me... The reason it scares me, it reminds me, it's got that vibe of The Crucible,
Totally.
The Witch even, where there's a looming doom because everything's going a little bit too well. It's quite idyllic. Everything's working in this community and the cogs are all turning perfectly. And so, for me, that always puts me at unease, like something wicked this way comes.
I agree, and I don't know why. We talked about this with The Witch, but I find anything period set in this kind of era scary from the get-go, basically.
For me, it is, yeah.
Before anything's even happened, just the look of it, the costumes, the production design, I'm already on edge. I don't know why. It's like, and we've talked about this a lot with folk horror. Folk horror somehow evokes just fear of the old, fear of old traditions, old ways of life, old beliefs, and again, that's what you're lumped straight into with a movie like this, aren't you? Yeah, it's and I think like, despite people have problems with his twists and his writing sometimes, but I think he directs things immaculately. I think that this film looks stunning, doesn't it?
It's completely stunning, and also the color palette, and also, I mean, the deliberate color palette, which is part of the film of not having red because that's the bad color.
Yes,
and I think it's just stunning. But I find it amazing that people talk about his writing because for me, I think he's exceptional because I think his characters are always so rounded and they have depth and personality. Even the most insignificant sort of supporting characters are individual personalities with unique traits and qualities. And for an actor that I am, seeing that, I think it's just a gift. And I think he has a real way of writing humans very well.
He does. And actually, we should say it's an amazing cast actually in this film.
Don't get me
this
started.
was kind of peak Shyamalan, I think, and it was still the point where everyone wanted to work with him.
Everyone, yeah.
And it's this incredible ensemble cast. It's like everyone in this village is a famous actor.
Even with one line.
So you've got Joaquin Phoenix and Sigourney Weaver and all these incredible Adrian
Sigourney,
Brody.
I'm buying the ticket anyway, so it doesn't matter who else is in it.
Of course. And then, but then at the centre of it, you've got Bryce Dallas Howard, who I think this was her first
What a revelation
role,
at the time.
First big role, and she steals it, doesn't she?
Completely.
Absolutely steals it. And she's kind of the secret star. Like, I think you start off not... Because I remember all the marketing was very much, this is Joaquin Phoenix's film, you know?
Because it came after Signs.
Yeah, but it's totally hers. It's her story, isn't it? Yeah, really, really good.
Yeah, and even Michael Pitt, who is a small part as the Watchman in the Tower.
Yes.
He shines, and that's what I mean about the writing. It's a really small part, but he absolutely stands out.
Yes, it does. And so you mentioned obviously the first three films he did were very much kind of marketed as like thrillers. Is this film still scary?
It depends on who's watching, but for me it is, like, rewatching it now, and it must be over a decade since I've seen it.
Yeah.
Since I first watched it, I think it the more mature I am now, I think it scared me more.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
Because of life and living life a bit more now. And the threats of the others or the outside. Obviously, in this, it's this surrounding area with the others, but
these monsters or whatever.
The monsters or whatever they happen to be. But I do find it scary, and is that unsettling?
Yeah.
The way it's plateaued in their village and everything is how it should be.
Yeah.
And as I said before, that just always flips my stomach.
Yeah, and there are moments in it that are like proper suspense horror moments when these monsters, or we won't say what they are, but when these things do come into the village and the bells ring and there's the red marks.
Yeah, and everyone has to get
stuff.
inside, get under and you see, you do see the monsters.
Yes, and the moment when there's somebody up in a watchtower, it's really good. Like
that's Michael Pitt.
Yeah, Michael Pitt. Yeah. I think Shyamalan is just amazing at suspense and misdirection and those kind of, and his jump scares always feel like really well earned jump scares as well.
Oh, that one with when he's looking down from the watchtower.
Yes, just brilliant, amazing. It does have its flaws, and I feel like we can't really talk about them because
it might give a few things away.
But
I think most of the flaws are beyond that point we're talking about.
Yeah,
and there are kind of two twists.
There are two twists, and actually it's really interesting as well that this is the film we're starting with. We've been talking about how, they fall into one of two camps, these folk horrors. Are they about people and community groupthink and, kind of cult type beliefs, or are they about folklores and magical monsters in the woods?
Exactly.
And again, this movie is kind of both. It ticks both boxes at the same
yeah.
time, which is really interesting. But we shouldn't say any more than
that. No, it's hard.
But you, I mean, I'm sure most people out there have seen The Village, but would you recommend it to people then that haven't yet?
I absolutely would, yeah.
Mm.
And especially if you're not a fan of Shyamalan, if you've seen his films and you don't really think much of them, I definitely watch The Village.
Yes, I agree, because I think he did have a dip after this.
Well, this wasn't it, The Lady in the Water?
Lady in the Water.
So, yeah.
The Happening,
oh.
The Last Airbender. He then went into bad territory.
Yeah.
But this movie is better than people.
Really good one.
Yeah, it's better than its reputation suggests.
I agree.
think. Yeah.
Thumbs up from me.
Thumbs up from me as well. Amazing. All right, what's next on our list?
It is 2004's French extremity film Calvaire by Fabrice Duvets.
Ooh. This is an interesting one, and again, you've said French extremity film. This is the first time I think on this podcast we've touched upon one of these movies, these kind of French extreme movies. I mean, first of all, it's very self-explanatory, but what do you mean by French extremity?
Basically, the new French extremity movement, as it's often called, is basically a collection of films by various French filmmakers that started in the early 2000s, sort of 2001 onwards. Very broad stroke, the films are usually centered around extreme violence and or body pain, shocking or taboo imagery, basically.
Yes.
And leans towards the severe end of pain and showing it rather than suggesting it.
Yes.
In that, so it's body horror, but not in the way of The Thing or Society.
Exactly. And it kind of ran simultaneously to torture porn in America. But again, it's a bit different to torture porn. It's not like a Hostel or a Saw movie.
No, it's definitely not, because this is more almost voyeuristic and at times snuff instead of meant to be, ooh, look at that, that's entertaining.
Yes, exactly. There's something much more upsetting about French extremity, but deliberately so, I suppose. So the most famous example being Martyrs, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, that's the one
everyone... upsetting movie ever made, basically. I think Calvaire is a lesser known one. It's an interesting, and actually we should probably say it's technically a Belgian film.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah, of course everyone puts it, I mean, it is a French, co-Belgian production, and it is in the French language, and it does very much have all of the tropes of French extremity. So I think people lump it in with the same, but of course it is actually Belgian. So we should point that out. Okay, so what is the story of Calvaire?
What do you want? The one that I wrote?
Yeah, I want all of yours because yours are better. Yeah, go on.
I've seen that. Right. Okay. This is what I put without giving too much away.
Yeah, go
on. A travelling cabaret performer, Mark, who mainly performs for an older generation of ladies, is travelling to the south of France to perform in a Christmas gala. En route, his van breaks down in an isolated and very rural country village. There, he encounters just two people, a man and his mentally unstable son. He's forced to stay with them while he waits for car parts to be sent over, but things turn strange very quickly, and he ends up in a living hell.
Love it.
Do you like it?
Oh my god!
I should do.
You could do this. Yeah, you could be like movie
work for
marketing.
IMDb.
Yeah, you should. Yeah. So, what do you think of this film? First of all, are you a fan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it always feels weird to go, I love this film from French Extremity.
Yes.
But
do you like French Extremity generally? Are you Yeah, I know.
No, I really appreciate it, and I've seen quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
And I think also just the political side of it, I really like, because it came out of a place where people were kind of lumping French films as bourgeois and arty and really watchable. So as Rebellion, these filmmakers went, well, let's make it fucking unwatchable.
Yes.
Don't fucking think of us like that. And it mimics their art movements, you know, from the Enlightenment to Surrealism, for
Totally.
instance.
And I think, you know, it started as well with kind of esteemed filmmakers. Kind of started this movement. You had Claire Denis do, what's it called?
Is that Bazemore?
No. Trouble Every Day. Claire Denis' Trouble Every Day,
that,
which is absolutely horrible, and Gaspar Noé's Irreversible, obviously, you know, and then it progressed from there. So yeah, you know, I think it's almost like people didn't know quite what to think at this point, because it's like these are established auteurs, and yet they're making like smut in some way, you know. I think critics didn't quite know how to handle it, but it is really interesting.
One of the things I think sets Calvaire apart is its humour, and it feels weird saying that. There is a lot to be amused by, not for the characters, but for us.
I think it is. I think it's intentional. I think,
of course, it is.
It is a real, really, really black comedy. Like, I think it is designed that way. I rewatched it. I hadn't seen it since it first came out, and I rewatched it this morning before recording this. And
breakfast.
Breakfast. It was genuinely my Sunday morning film, and I really enjoyed it, which is a weird thing to say, but it's a lot easier to watch. Again, which is a weird thing to say. Than Martyrs or Irreversible, I think. And maybe because it is peppered with this kind of extreme humour and these quirky characters, it's got that folky feel. Yes.
It's deliberately heightened, and it's theatrical in some of its elements.
It deliberately so, isn't it? Because
like
of our main character.
These silly, the main character, and all these caricatures. And also the fact he's a performer, you know, whenever he says that to someone, like, oh, go on, sing.
Yes, it's brilliant.
So he has to keep fucking singing songs.
It's brilliant. I know. Yeah, did you feel for him as a performer yourself?
Yes. It's like going to my mum's at Christmas and meeting her friends. Oh, Stephen, go on. Well, this is the thing that's quite funny. Yes. My mum always means to say repertoire, but she says abattoir. And she always says, go on, give us something from your abattoir.
Brilliant.
Well, let me just go and
Here's
get
a dead
leg.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yes. Oh my God. And did you ever have to do, because I've got a few actor mates who had to do the kind of the school circuits and also the old people's home circuits and that kind of stuff.
Well, do you know what's funny?
Yeah.
My dad used to do what the guy in this film did.
Ah, amazing.
Because he was in a pop group in the 70s and 80s. And then in the 90s, he did his own solo cabaret act where he did stand-up comedy and singing songs.
Brilliant.
And so on Christmas break sometimes, I'd travel with him for a few days across the country. In the car, we'd stop at one old lady's home.
Amazing.
And they'd just think he's a god. So obviously he was getting a lot from this.
Amazing.
And then we'd travel to Poole, then Bath, and then up to Scotland. And so
you're
went
familiar
on
with this
journey,
world, yeah.
But as far as I know, he never encountered somewhere like
he never broke down in the woods anywhere.
No,
it's good to know. Yeah,
like this,
it is interesting, and I do think that there's something deliberately. And again, this is the sort of film I feel like actually I could have done like an hour-long chat on in a way. There is a lot to unpick with it. The fact that basically after the first 5 minutes, other than the old ladies that you see in the nursing home, which is really funny, then there is not a single female character.
I'm glad
you
said that.
Yeah,
it's very important.
It is so important, I think, and there's a lot we could talk about with a lot of these films coming up about masculinity and men in the woods.
Totally.
And there's so much of this coming up, isn't there, and what we're going to talk about. And it's definitely a thing with folk horror. I think ghost stories were very much a lot of the time about women in the centre of them and what it means to be a woman and a mother and a wife and stuff. And these are, a lot of them are so much about men. And I think it's got something to do with the fact that it links to kind of survival tactics in the woods, and therefore
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
and what I really like though is often they're emasculated.
Totally,
because it's like they're all these pit bulls, and then eventually they walk into a lion's den. And it's like, fuck, now that's a beast.
Exactly, and it goes back to movies like Deliverance, which is all about that again, and it, sadly as well, I think, you know, rape plays a big part in a lot of folk horror films as well. You know, whether it's male rape, female rape, animal rape.
Yeah,
you know, we've got them all here.
We've covered a couple of the things. But as you say, it's so wonderfully deliberate that all these old women are all over him and think he's a god, and then you never see another one. But there's a wonderful moment. It's just one shot where you see a group of identically dressed children in the town, but you never. Where are the mums? Where are their mothers? And God forbid where they are. You don't want to know.
You don't know exactly. And again, the director apparently cited as one of his inspirations the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I think that's so. There is one moment in particular where a character is tied to a chair screaming and all the other characters are kind of mocking him and laughing. That is exactly, and there's a close-up of an eyeball, and it is exactly shot for shot a Texas Chainsaw Massacre scene. And again, there's that Texas Chainsaw Massacre family. Where are all the women? Sex doesn't seem to be even a thing. There is there's definitely shades of that in this as well.
Yeah, it's great. And as you say, I mean, we could sit here for hours on this film.
Oh God, there's so much I want to say about it.
I think you could about every French Extremity film.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
what they're made for.
I would say in some ways this is if you're new to French Extremity,
start with this.
It's actually not a bad way in, because it's not Martyrs. You're not being lumped in the deep end with it. It is. Yeah. It's at least got a bit of humour and a bit of pathos as well. Yeah. You know, it's not.
And it's still very uncomfortable. Like the last 15 minutes are.
So it has obviously
horrendous.
got loads of extreme
and then sort
gore.
of beautiful. Do you think the very last scene?
Absolutely, it's beautiful. It's horrific.
Yeah.
There's loads of really horrible animal imagery and animal noises and. Oh God!
I just thought about it.
At one point, I had to turn the volume right down because I was like, "This is too much." So it is extreme and it is great. I loved it. I thought it was brilliant.
Me too.
Really, really loved
awesome.
it. Yeah, big thumbs up. Amazing. Okay, let's move on. What's next?
It is 2007's Hot Fuzz, directed by Edgar Wright.
So one extreme to the other.
Yeah, it really is.
What's nice about this list?
Get out of my village! Not your village anymore!
London-based overachieving police officer is finally offered the promotion he deserves, but it's in Gloucestershire. Shortly after, there's a string of grisly deaths, which the other police label accidents, so he begins a manhunt to track down what he believes to be a serial killer.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. So yeah, I mean, again, I can't imagine there's anyone that hasn't seen this movie. And you know, technically not really horror. I mean, it's
satire,
a comedy. It's a satire. I mean, this is kind of similar to when me and Brad discussed Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I mean, there's definitely like horror roots in this.
Yeah, it's like a really extended comedic Prime Suspect episode set in the town of Straw Dogs.
Yeah. Exactly that.
Put that on the cover.
Yeah, put that on your cover. And Edgar Wright was so good at this that I suppose that's the whole point of that Cornetto trilogy was it was like very, very British takes on genre movies, wasn't it? And you had the zombie movie, obviously. And this is, it kind of like, I think the main thing they're going for in this is the kind of Point Break cop thriller.
Totally, yeah, which is, they talk about a lot.
They talk about and reference overtly. But also, there is definite folk horror in this, and there is definite Wicker Man references.
And
They've got Edward Woodward, who's in it, you know.
There's loads of little
There's loads of little moments.
And they mentioned Straw Dogs a couple of times.
They mentioned Straw Dogs. So, yeah, we couldn't not include it in the list. What do you think of Hot Fuzz? Are you a fan?
Oh, yeah, it's just so fucking fun, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't not be.
And what works so well is because Simon Pegg just plays it so straight.
Yes.
The straight man in a crazy world. And that is what works. So if he didn't, it would be just far too slapstick. It's the funny thing is one person in a situation where he's the odd one out, which is folk horror.
Exactly,
which is
that.
Calvaire, and it's it's the
city man,
the outsider intruding on someone else's community.
Yeah, and exactly that. And it is, and again, yeah, you're right. Edgar Wright is so good, I think, and Simon Pegg, obviously, who writes it. You know, but they're so good at balancing. It's not just a complete parody. It's not a scary movie. Like they take it seriously as a genre film as well as being fun and funny. That's the thing, don't they?
That's the great thing when he's seriously upset or seriously angry, he plays it as that.
Yes.
And so you can find it hilarious because the situation you're watching is. Yeah. But he's not hamming it up or sending it up as funny.
Exactly. And actually, like, gore. There's proper gore.
So much gore. That's what I absolutely love. Yeah. It's just spews and spews of blood.
Yes, exactly.
Like the moment the sort of mini church spire falls down and just goes into his head and he stood up with it pouring out. It's brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. It is, I think it's like one of the, I mean, I actually it's not underrated. I think it is rated. Everyone loves it. But I think, you know, compared to Shaun of the Dead, I think it's not quite as loved or talked about as Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
And Shaun of the Dead, I suppose, was really groundbreaking. But I do think Hot Fuzz is as good. It's like the Unbreakable to the Sixth Sense for me. I think it's up there, really.
I completely agree. And just so many one-liners as well.
Yeah.
And so many little phrases that you could go undetected, and then watching it again, you catch it the second time and go, oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's so good. I mean, if you're in the UK, I'm sure just switch onto ITV2 at any point on any day of the week and you'll catch this movie. I mean, it is available. So yeah, Hot Fuzz, again, big recommendation.
Loads of thumbs up.
All
of the thumbs I've got.
It's going very well so far, very positive. Although now...
Well then.
Now, let's move on to the next film, which is Wakewood from 2009.
What goes on in Wakewood is not for everyone. But what goes on?
I can bring your daughter back to life for a short time, so you can see her, hold her again, and say goodbye properly.
Will she be normal?
Her heart will beat, her breath will breathe, and she'll remember the time she had with you.
But it's not so simple, is it?
The ritual of the return binds you to Wakewood.
Oh, my baby. Oh, my baby.
Is this for real?
After a young couple lose their infant daughter in a vicious dog attack, they relocate to a rural town called Wakewood. Their relationship's under strain from the grief, and moving to the small town isn't giving them the change they want. One night, Louise, the wife, stumbles upon a ritualistic ceremony being carried out by the locals, where she sees what can only be described as the birth of a man. She then... That sounds ridiculous.
Good.
They discover the ritual can bring back the dead, but only if the dead have been dead less than a year, and they can only come back to life for 3 days. They decide to do this with their daughter.
Interesting. So, had you seen this before, or did you watch this for the first time?
No, I had not seen it before.
Yeah, me too. I watched it for the first time this week.
Go on then, what did you think?
A lot of people were tweeting about this. I've had so many people mention it, going, "Oh, it's great," or "You make sure you include Wakewood." Are you going to talk about Wakewood? So it's like, okay, we've got to include this in the list. I don't know how I feel about it. I think it's about 50% an interesting film.
Yeah.
There are elements of
watchable.
It's watchable. There are elements of it that were really good, and I liked the setup, and I was kind of in it. And then I found it quite unbearably ridiculous in the second half. It kind of becomes a different story.
Yeah, the
almost.
second act is just silly. It becomes silly.
It does become silly. And I don't know whether that's partly down to the writing, partly down to some of the performances. I don't know, but I mean, it's got some really good performances as well. Obviously, we should mention this stars Aidan Gillen and also Timothy Spall.
I mean, they're both
amazing.
I mean, they do the best with what they're given, and that's a lot.
Totally, yeah.
I think they're both great in the film.
Yeah.
There's just so many. It's just so many little things. Like, do you know what? Little things like, why in rituals when someone slices their palm open to give blood to the ritual, do they never wince, and then it's never referred to again, and it's not even bandaged up throughout the rest of the film. When you get a paper cut, every time you pick something up, you're like, ah!
Yeah, it's true.
Just things like that piss me off a little bit.
Yeah, and I think I don't know, without giving too much away, it feels like it basically becomes Pet Sematary in the second half.
It's the Irish Pet Sematary.
It's the Irish folky Pet Sematary, and yeah, that's not what I wanted from this story in a way, and it's not what the setup promised me, I don't think.
And there are a few, not even homages, sort of rip-offs of little horror
definitely
tropes that we've seen before.
Yeah, definitely. There's a few cliches. There were parts of it I really like. I like that it was quite extreme in terms of the gore, the body horror, kind of animal gruiness. There's a lot of like really gross stuff in there, which I kind of appreciated.
That's my favourite bit.
Yeah.
All those moments I was like, oof, wasn't expecting that.
And some really striking imagery of like, without giving too much, things giving birth to things.
Yes, exactly. And the moment when they cross the border when they're not meant to.
Yes.
That moment made me go, ooh, that's nice.
Yes, exactly. So there's some definite good stuff.
Yeah. I don't think I was scared. I think that's the problem.
Neither.
I don't think I was scared. I watched it and I appreciated it, but for me, it was nothing new.
Yeah, exactly. Same here. It had a little bit like it could have been a TV movie you could have seen.
Sure.
But I think there was. I think what makes it even more frustrating is that there was a lot of like promising, interesting stuff that could have just been a little bit better.
The seeds were planted.
Yeah.
Like, the actual ritual moments were so great.
Really good.
And also the sort of abacus reader that they use was a really interesting idea, and
I loved all those characters of the sort of ensemble of the villagers, the community. They were all really good and really interesting, and again led by Timothy Spall, Timothy Spall can be really scary when he wants to be as well, really sinister.
Something very he can be very unnerving.
Because
he's smiling, but there's something behind his eyes that he doesn't
going on. So kind of it's not terrible by any means,
not
but
at all.
it just could have been a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's there's a sort of Irish set film coming up that we're going to talk about that I think you should go for that first.
It's better.
Yeah.
I agree, 100%. Yes. All right, let's move on then. What's next?
The Borderlands by Zev Berman.
Yeah, ask this fella here. He looks like an agreeable local bumpkin type.
Hi, can you tell us where the church is renting these?
Yeah, like, you know, it's a big pointy building with a spire on top.
Please be quiet.
Now we're going to examine the altar. Here's the crucifix. Must cross-check crucifix against video footage.
Deacon, what we saw up there was not normal. Was not normal.
Found footage. There are 1,001 found footage movies out there. You know, how does this compare to the others for you?
Well, you have to wade through some shit.
Yes.
To find, like, you have to watch Willow Creek, and then you find Hell House, which I really like, and then you find the Borderlands. For instance,
exactly,
which is great. And so I did find it refreshing, which I didn't think is something you can say anymore about found footage.
Totally, yeah.
I think the setup's great, and there's some really chilling and claustrophobic moments.
Oh my god, yeah. If you are claustrophobic, there are certain scenes in this that I was squirming in my seat. You know, it is.
Me too. I didn't like that. It's just like I had to hold my breath and look away at the end of the new Blair Witch, where she gets stuck in that tunnel, for instance.
Totally.
There's moments like that in this that really they make your chest feel compressed.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, definitely. And actually, it's a small movie, and it really focuses on pretty much just two characters. There are a couple of other periphery characters that come into it, but it's these two guys played by Gordon Kennedy and Robin Hill. Yeah. What do you think of those two?
They're the perfect odd couple, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
It's great because you've got the hardened skeptic, and then the slightly bouncy, slightly exciting young sort of boy who's like, oh wow, what are we going to do? We're going to find some ghosts. And he's like, no, ghosts don't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
It's great. They bounce off each other, and their chemistry is great.
They have got really good chemistry, and actually they do. I think their conversations feel quite natural a lot of the time, and I think again, it's a real thing with found footage. We talked about this with the Blair Witch a couple of weeks ago, but found footage, particularly more than anything else, has to sound convincing. The whole point of it is it's got to look real, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. And you've got to feel like you're there with them, and it's a real conversation that they're in. And that's why I didn't actually look it up, and I don't know if any of this was improvised or not.
I think it was. I think some of it was was kind of them riffing. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, because I always think that's important. Yeah, if you're going to believe it, because if it's too structured, with the way the camera work is, it just jars with you.
Yeah, totally. And I think again, another thing with found footage is that there's the kind of the whole like, oh, why are you still filming this? If this is really happening to you, why are you still holding a camera?
Holding the camera,
and I think they get around that quite cleverly as well, because they've got these like little headsets on that basically don't, they can just leave them running, and therefore that's fine. And then the
not
other
using
stuff,
not taking up any of their
exactly. Yeah, they're not sort of
hindering them.
Yeah, they're not consciously carrying a camera around on their shoulder or something. Yeah. And then the other stuff that we see, the kind of, and again, it's very Paranormal Activity-esque, but it's they set up cameras, like you say, to catch ghosts in this church, and so all of that stuff it's set up in order for them to see what's going on at night. So you've got those classic shots, haven't you, from Paranormal Activity? Where it's like just long scenes of an empty
nothing
room,
aside, waiting.
Maybe a curtain will twitch or something will move, and everyone jumps out of their seat, basically. So in some ways, that kind of the main bulk of it, it's nothing completely groundbreaking, but it's like a really solid kind of post Paranormal Activity.
I completely agree. And what I really like about the head mics, the head cameras, is there's a couple of moments where you see things that they don't. Like you spot something and they didn't spot it. Like the gravestone moment. I don't know if you spotted that.
Ooh, I don't know.
This is the thing. It's very clever. You've probably missed it, but he the tech guy, I can't remember his name, but he's reading something, and he's out in the graveyard, and you see, if you look beyond the book, the gravestone beyond it says his name and today's date on it. And then when the book covers it and goes back, it's someone else's. It's a lady's name that was slightly similar to his.
Oh my god!
So you see it, but he doesn't. It's a very clever little touch.
That's amazing. That's very, very cool. And we should say as well, this isn't obviously. It's not just a ghost story. I mean, the reason we've got it on this list is it definitely has that kind of folk horror vibe, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's got this kind of very rural setting. We've got these moments where you've got quite hostile communities and local people.
Yeah, and you get the backstory of the sort of religious culty aspect of it,
and this whole kind of setup of like this church that was once a pagan church that then Christians came and basically, and this is something we've talked about again and again on folk horror, it's like this land once belonged to paganism, and then Christians came and basically built their shit on top of pagan shit.
Yeah.
And so it's all there beneath our feet in the soil kind of thing. And again, it's kind of a ghost story, but then it goes into some very not ghost story places towards the end, which is great.
The end
is what sets it apart, I think, from your average. But we can't say any more than
I was
that.
not expecting that, though.
No, it's pretty horrible. Yeah. Amazing. So that's a definite recommendation for me. I'm a big fan. It's very good. Okay, all right, what's next?
Yes, this is my favourite. Well, it's not my absolute favourite, but I can't wait to talk about it. But it's 2015's Corin Hardy directed The Hallow.
You're making people nervous. He's in the forest again, is he? He's trespassing. It's dangerous for him.
They believe that the forest that you're trampling on belongs to the Hallow.
Hallow.
Fairies, banshees, baby stealers.
So you a believer?
Mr. Hitchens, this is in London. Things here go bumping at night.
Just baby dreams.
A conservationist travels to Ireland to begin work on an area of woodland that is to be removed. With his wife and baby son in tow, they aren't welcomed with smiles by the locals, who don't want their land touched. They believe it to be inhabited by the Hallow, a collection of fairies, banshees and baby stealers that were driven there years ago by men with their iron and flame. Not believing this, he continues his work. He discovers a strange parasitic fungus on a dead deer one day, and the fungus takes over his house. They discover that the Hallow are very much real, and soon learn that they... I don't want to give away that... they soon learn that they want their baby Finn, and then the battle between fairy and human begins.
Oh, nice. Very, very good. I suppose, like, unlike a lot of the other movies we've mentioned so far, this is kind of very much an unashamedly supernatural, magical folk horror
it's folk
film.
lore.
Proper folk lore.
Yeah, it puts the lore in it.
Exactly. And you're a fan by the sounds of it.
I am. It really reminds me of the stuff I loved when I was a kid, because it's a monster movie. It's a creature feature.
Creature feature. You're right. Yes.
But every creature in this is different, and you see them, and the design of each one is so beautiful and yet gnarled and terrifying. You know, this grisly fairy with sort of one eye and strands of Zelda hair. It's just, I think it's fantastic, and it feels really old fashioned.
Yeah.
And also, I think the lighting in this, I should have looked up the name, but the sort of misty, grim fairy tale vibe that it's got. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, just the look of it is stunning, isn't it? It is the whole production design. And Corin Hardy, who is now about to... Well, he's directed The Nun, the Conjuring spin-off that's about to come out at the point we're recording this. It's probably already out by the time this is out, actually. But again, it feels like he really knows what he's doing in terms of like giving something a really nice look. I mean, again, The Nun from the trailer looks like it's going to be...
Absolutely. You can see it's the same guy. It's clearly his. He's got his style, and I am very much into it.
Yes, I'm all for it. He's kind of unashamedly old-fashioned, I think. Yeah, which is what's really nice.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, definitely.
It's funny as well. There's some in this. There's actually, I think I wrote it down. My favourite line. Arden Gillen asks one of the characters, one of the local characters, "So are you a believer in all this?" And he replies, "Nah, I'm from Belfast. We've got a different kind of boogeyman up there."
Yes, is that Michael Smiley? Is that Michael Smiley who says that line? I think it is. He's got a very small role in it.
It probably is then.
As a cop. Yeah.
It's great.
It's a kind of almost like a Siege style movie, isn't it? Where it's like they're trapped in this house, they're under attack.
Yeah.
Their baby is in danger, and that in itself is quite a scary core concept. That it's like they're coming to snatch away the baby.
Yeah. And it's that these things are on every side of the house and on the roof. And
yes.
It's about where do they go, and is it all right to say? Yeah, it's all right to say, but they're scared of light. They can't go in the light, so that's your only weapon.
Ooh, yeah.
And I'm not going to give anything away, but one of the most terrifying scenes in it. This scene involves Louise, I think the wife is, and she's stuck in the attic, and he's trying to turn the generator on, and it's one of the most intense time is of the essence.
Yes.
During this attic
Yes,
scene,
yes.
and for him to get this generator on, and it's just so well shot. And I think it's brilliant.
It's the sort of thing that would have absolutely terrified me as a child, and yet
Yeah.
I'd probably still loved it. But it is that kind of. I remember the thing that I watched when I was about 5. I watched Labyrinth. And
I was
the
about to say
opening scene of Labyrinth terrified me when the goblins will suddenly appear in the bedroom and steal the baby
and
away.
It's dark and thundery and lightning. Yeah,
and
there's
David
all these-
Bowie appears.
Yeah.
You know, but it's basically that, but as a
Did
whole
you say
film.
it? And they're in the cupboard. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Is he going to say it? Say what? You shut up!
That's basically what the Hallow is, really.
Yeah, it's like a really fucked up
Yeah.
labyrinth
It
that's
is.
not really for kids.
Yeah, exactly. But it's got that really lovely kind of fantastical element. Yeah, it's great fun. Really great fun.
Love,
yeah,
love,
it feels
love.
like it belonged in the 80s. I wonder, 'cause
Yes.
it didn't really, I don't think it really, apart from maybe genre fans, really find an audience, I don't think.
No, I mean, I knew of it.
Yeah.
I think actually the first thing, which is terrible, drew me to it is I saw the cover art, well, one of the several cover arts, and I was just like, that looks great.
Yes.
I want it, because it looked almost like children's fantasy.
Exactly. Again, it's all about the look. It's the design. It's the production design.
Yeah.
It's the really, really stunning. All right, so that's the Hallow. Big thumbs up from us. Okay, what's next?
We have the 2016 Korean horror film, The Wailing by Hong Yin-na.
내 눈깔을 직접 봐야 쓰겠다.
Okay, The Wailing. What? Take it away. What have you got to say about
This
The
was a
Wailing?
hard one to summarize,
It's
let me
not.
tell you, because
really
it's
is.
epic.
Yes.
And so much goes on. So I tried to condense it into about 8 lines.
Oh my god, amazing.
So, I mean, bear with me. A slightly dopey police officer becomes concerned about a series of strange occurrences in his quiet town. An almost zombie-type viral outbreak. First believing it to be the work of a strain of magic mushrooms, the suspicion then turns to the mysterious Japanese man who recently moved to the village. Things go from bad to worse when his own daughter is affected by the happenings, and he begins a tireless effort to find the root of the evil and rip it out.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
Very good. Yes. I mean, exactly. It's epic. We should say, I think it's about 3 hours long.
Yeah, it's just shy of 3 hours.
Just
It's
shy
like
of 3 hours.
2:40, I think.
It's amazing. This is like the Ben-Hur of horror films, this
really
film.
is.
And it has got everything in it. Like you said, there's almost like a zombie element to this.
Yeah.
There's like an infection spreading element. You've got like what almost feels like sort of witchcraft or voodoo.
Definitely.
You've got like almost sort of serial killer touches or kind of weird kind of cult type things. You know, you've got that folk element to it as well.
Slightly ghosty elements.
You've got this kind of police procedural element. It's a million things rolled into one. Like, but does it work? Do all those elements work for you?
For me, I mean, well, I watched while you were watching Calvaire for breakfast. I was watching The Wailing.
Amazing.
So we're just
Amazing.
watching our foreign horror for breakfast, which is great. But I was glued.
Yes.
And I was really glued to it. And various people had told me, and it's so bizarre. My friend Cody had texted me 2 nights ago, going, "Hey, dude, have you seen this film, The Wailing?" And I was like, "I'm about to talk about it in a couple of days' time, and I'm watching it tomorrow." And it sucks you in straight away because it starts very comical.
It does. It
And
does.
it's funny. And I was genuinely chuckling, reading the
Yes.
subtitles and chuckling.
Yes.
And so I didn't know where it was going to go. And then I can't really remember the moment where it takes a turn for the series. But yeah, you see there's a lot of great images and this viral, as we say, a seemingly viral outbreak. And then...
Yeah, that's when it starts getting scary. When you get these infected people sort of pop up in the woods
just turning
and stuff
up,
like
and
that.
then
It's
houses are burning down and people are getting hung.
Yes.
And crows are everywhere.
Yeah.
And then...
I mean, I think that the best compliment I can give this film, this movie feels like it doesn't feel like it drags. It feels like it earns that running time.
Completely.
There are so many elements to it, and it slowly unfolds, and it's never boring, and it is fascinating because you're unpiecing this mystery bit by bit, and there's always something scary and exciting or funny going on.
That's a really good way of saying it. It is like a mystery. It is this big mystery, and you're on board.
Yes,
and you're with them because they're always trying to find the clues, and you
Yep.
know, some people think it's to do with this, some people it's to do with that.
Yeah.
And they keep and there's little red herrings here and there.
Yes.
And a very large red herring towards the end. Actually, my favourite moment, stand-up moment, which I won't give away, but when the shaman gets on the phone and basically says he's worked something out, my blood ran cold.
Yes.
It was that moment for me, you know, at the end of The Ring when everything's fine, she's like, I saved her, Samara's free. And he goes, what?
Yeah.
Why did you help her?
Totally.
And you go, what?
Yeah, it's exactly that. And again, it does have a lot of those kind of Eastern horror movie tropes, you know, that it shares with J-horror. It's a little bit different, but it has an unconventional structure. It takes its time, and it doesn't have necessarily jump scares, but it has kind of creeping dread a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And also tonally, it does really fluctuate. Like you say, it starts off very kind of silly. This main cop character that's kind of with us throughout this whole journey is really funny. He's a real kind of, like you say, he's a silly slapstick,
sleeps
kind
on
of
the job,
dopey kind of cop, isn't he? But then it really seamlessly kind of gets darker and darker, and at times gets really tragic and sad as well, doesn't it? And devastating.
I found it very upsetting.
Yeah.
Once I suppose the tone changes when it turns on his family.
Yes.
And then he becomes the family man, scared for the well-being of
his
of
wife
his loved
and daughter.
ones. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And again, there are so many amazing standout moments. I think there is one incredible, like, kind of centerpiece where this shaman is doing this big ritual, and it montages and it gets louder and everything escalates.
And at the same time, someone else is doing a contrasting ritual.
Yes, and it's like it builds and it's kind of terrifying and devastating and fascinating all at the same time. It's really well done, isn't it?
That was my favourite moment, because it goes on for a long time.
It does.
This ritual.
Yes.
And there's colours and there's different things added to the ritual, and
yes,
there are people squirming and screaming, and it's cutting back and forth between two things that we won't really go into detail about, and it's intense.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I remember seeing this. I first saw this at London. It premiered at London Film Festival, so I got to see it at the BFI here on a big screen, which was perfect. Actually, the cinematography is gorgeous in this as well. These kind of scenic shots. You've got this amazing kind of backdrop of Korea with like these amazing cliffs and waterfalls and woods, and it's just makes me want to go there straight away, doesn't it? Yeah,
it's stunning.
Yeah, it's a huge recommendation. I think it's really, you know, for anyone put off, and I could see why people would be put off by wanting to watch a nearly 3 hour long subtitled horror film, but it's really good. It's really good, and it's definitely available on Netflix.
It is
definitely available on Netflix.
Absolutely.
So give it a try
for free.
Yes, exactly, for free. Wonderful. All right, we're getting there. We're all the way up to 2017 now, so we're coming into
we've only got our last
3 left.
Yeah, only about 3 left. Yeah.
Okay, what's next?
So next we have 2017's Pyewacket by Adam McDonald.
What's wrong?
You tell me. Ever since your father died, you've been into that occult crap. It makes me feel better, and your friends are losers, Leah, like you're becoming. Every time I look at you, I see your father's face. God, I wish I could just wipe it off. I wish you were dead!
Darkness, I charge you with this sign. Mother and the night are mine. I invite you to come. Pyewacket.
After the loss of her father, a black magic-loving girl is relocated by her mother to a small woodland home to start afresh. Feeling isolated and friendless, her tumultuous relationship with her mother goes from bad to worse, and she says the unthinkable, I wish you were dead. Still in an emotional rage, she takes to the woods and calls up a witch called Pyewacket to come and do her bidding. After calming down a bit and not really thinking it would work, strange things start to happen, and she fears for her mother's safety and is thrown into a world of constant fear and anxiety.
Lovely. So you, I hadn't seen this until this week, and you'd seen it and recommended it to me massively.
Yes.
You're a big fan.
I'm a big advocate for this.
Yeah. And it's funny because I'd heard mixed things, because I had another friend who I was saying, I'm going to watch Pyewacket tonight, and he was like, oh, mate, it's fucking terrible and stuff.
And I've got people saying that to me as well.
Yeah. It's strange, isn't it? It's really divided people.
Totally.
And weirdly, I am somewhere in the middle. I didn't love it. But there are things about it that really creeped me out as well, and some of it annoyed me a little bit as well. So yeah, I don't know. I know mixed on it.
Yeah, because on second viewing, which it was a couple of weeks ago, there were moments when I went, I can kind of see why people don't like this.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
You know, it's kind of it's the love child of the Babadook and the Craft.
It's exactly that. And I think sometimes I'm a huge fan of the Babadook and the Craft. Maybe that's the other problem, was that for me it doesn't reach the heights of either of those quite.
Yeah, sure.
But having said that, it's what I think really works is this core mother-daughter relationship, and that's all that is what it is really.
It's just a two-hander about
It's a two-hander, it's a character drama, and it's really tragic and sad and dark, and again, kind of not there's not much humour in this, or
not at all.
Bleak. Despite the silly title, there's nothing silly about what happens to these characters.
Yeah,
really, is it?
Yeah, and it delivers a sucker punch at the end for you.
It does. Yeah,
I don't, and it's strange. Maybe that's just the darkness in me. I don't know why I like it so much because it's incredibly bleak.
Yeah,
there's no joy, as you say. Even the hue of the way it's filmed is sort of dank and grey.
Yes, very similar colour palette to the Babadook, isn't it?
It
that
is.
Kind of
Yeah,
washed out,
exactly.
Pale.
Washed out, yeah.
And in terms of the craft, I mean, it's full of teen angst, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
I know.
full of moody, gothy teenagers.
That's the bit where I realised when she's hanging with her friends and those sort of scenes. That's when I watched it the second. I was like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
Like people are like, oh, piss off.
Yeah, it's a little bit annoying. I mean, I'm
talking about spells.
I'm with the mother 100% through the entire film. I'm like, oh god. Were you an angsty teen, Stevie?
Well, I think I pretended to be. Because I considered myself a witch. Yeah. I did. And I used to wear red contact lenses and floor-length leather jacket.
Amazing. Yeah.
So I think that's probably why I take to this one. But I do think the last 20 minutes, the gear up is fantastic. And when you do see the Pyewacket,
that was a chilling moment.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't want to give anything away, but there's a couple of very brief appearances of it as well. Yeah. And it's like, holy shit, and they reveal just enough. And I think it is quite a low budget film. It feels like quite a small budget film. And I think they know that, when you do see it, it's either very fleeting glimpses or it's from very far away, and that works really well, I think, or it's on the periphery.
Yeah, because if it was a close-up and without a budget, you'd go, no, that's a shame.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think they know just the amount to reveal, which is really nice about it.
That works.
I mean, it's almost more kind of an occult witch movie than it is a folk horror in a way. But I
think the only the sort of similarities to folk horror is that whole dealing with grief and relocating to a rural, isolated area.
It's all in the woods.
Yeah, what more do you want?
Yeah, exactly. There are lots of trees, and they live in the middle of nowhere.
I just wanted to talk about it, so I've shoehorned it into folk horror.
I know. I was like, that's fine. We'll add it to the list. But I think it does as well, because it's very much whether or not this Pyewacket, whatever it is, it's some kind of monster. It's like evoking it from the woods with rituals. I mean, it has all of that element to it. Yeah. I mean, I think it's. Actually, who I really liked is the actress who played the mother, Laurie Holden.
Oh, she's awesome.
Who was from The Walking Dead. Back when The Walking Dead was good.
Exactly.
In fact, I think the program died with her.
Yeah, when she died, it died.
Yeah. And she was in The Mist as well.
Of course,
the greatest horror movie of recent years. So it's worth watching just for her as well.
Thank you.
All right, so we're nearly there. On to our penultimate pick.
Yeah, and it's a good one.
It's a good one.
Yes, it's 2017's The Ritual by David Bruckner.
Rob would have loved this place. He's a good man. The best of us.
You know, they have walking trails in England. Pubs.
Come on, man. Where's your soul?
It's twisted. It's twisted.
All right, yep. Easy. Look, we go southwest through here. We cut the journey in half.
What, through the forest?
Yeah, why not?
I should have gone to Vegas.
Oh, you'd have found something to fall over in Vegas too, mate. Now, is it me, or is it really quiet in here?
Five friends are planning their annual holiday and decide to go on a hike in Europe. When two of them that night go to a store to buy alcohol, there is a hold-up in the place. One of them is caught by the thieves and killed. So the remaining four decide to go on a hiking trip in his honour. The trip through the mountains and forests becomes not only a test of loyalty and friendship, but of belief, mental capacity, and overall survival as they're stalked by a threatening creature in the trees and stumble across grotesque and unexplainable sights.
Love it. Very good. This feels to me almost like a kind of male, like a brother to The Descent. That's what it feels like to me.
That's exactly
like you've got this group of men, all with kind of weird sort of character tensions going on beneath the surface, who then have to face monsters. But it's all about all of their relationships with each other.
And the cracks starting to show in that once they're under the pressure of this outside threat.
And I love that kind of
Me
shit.
too.
That's like crack to me, that kind of thing, where it's like it's super character based. It really takes its time with character stuff, but then it doesn't shy away from giving you proper monster horror as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
really, really
good. you know it's coming, but you know they're going to fall apart before anything else gets to them.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, first of all, I guess a film like this, like we say, it's very character based. Do the performers do it justice? I mean, obviously you've got Rafe Spall at the centre of it as well.
I love everything he does.
Yeah.
I really do. I think he's got. I mean, he's fabulous in Hot Fuzz as well, for instance.
He is, yes, of course, with Paddy Considine.
Yeah, exactly, the little double act. Yeah. I just always believe him, and he has a way of making it seem like he's making up or speaking in the moment.
Yes,
and you can't teach that.
No, you're right.
I think it's really a wonderful talent that he's got, and I always believe maybe his dad taught him. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we're in the Spall family episode. Yeah, and I think he is always. He's just, I find him always likeable as well, and no matter whether he plays an unlikable character or not. And I think his character is interesting in this. You start off thinking, oh, this guy's a dick, and then actually, and then without giving too much away, but you kind of, again, what's really interesting about this film is you've got all these kind of quite three-dimensional characters in a way.
Of course, and he's racked with guilt.
Yes,
basically, but putting on that, he's got that machismo sort of way of dealing with it.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, we going back to this, like, this is a real kind of test of machismo, of masculinity. It's very much about that, isn't it?
In a pressure cooker.
Yeah, you've got the different kind of male stereotypes almost in this. You've got the kind of the macho, loud, annoying one. You've got the kind of really whiny one who needs help. Getting up and down. That's who I'd be in that situation. And so it's all of that's really interesting. All of those kind of tensions, but then obviously it's also a monster movie. I mean, how do you find? Because again, I've read reviews where some people have gone, well, as soon as you see the monster, it all goes downhill. What do you think of that?
I just find I think it's the fucking payoff. I just find that really surprising. For me, it took my breath away. I mean, just the design of it, I thought was so original. As I sort of mentioned to you before, I had that reaction that I did to the bear in Annihilation. You just go,
oh, yeah,
what is that? What, and who thought of that? That's brilliant.
A new monster.
And a brand new monster that is just unlike anything I've ever seen. And I think it's so important because you need something to be pushing them along and chasing them.
Yes.
And it's metaphorically as well as physically.
Yes.
Pushing them along and testing them, and so eventually they do come to a place where it all has to come out.
Yes, exactly. And
before they die.
Yeah, exactly. It's like all of that turmoil manifests into this thing, doesn't it? It's really great. In fact, the opening scene, the setup that takes place in the corner shop, it had me from that point. I was like, oh, I'm in this 100%.
Yeah.
And there were really clever little visual tricks where where
in the woods, where you're half in the store and half in the woods.
Yes.
And the design of the way they did that, I just thought it was so fantastic.
Really brilliant.
And mind-trippy.
Again, from a kind of folk horror perspective of it kind of being half this kind of urban backdrop with this like rural situation that they're in, and the way that it fluctuates between the two is really, really clever. It was really good. It came out in the cinema last year, but it was like no one really saw it, and it didn't really make waves. And then it came on Netflix. It's now on Netflix, and suddenly everyone was talking about it once it came out on Netflix. That was the place for it, apparently. It's really, really great. The director, David Bruckner, he directed one of the segments in VHS. Did you watch VHS?
Yes, which one?
So he did. Funnily enough, it's similar in some of its themes. It's the one where a bunch of lads take girls home to have sex with, and one of them becomes like a cat monster thing.
Gosh, that horrible
vampire, whatever it is.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, he directed that. Amateur Night. Yeah,
that was called.
That's what it was called.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You can see like a kind of few parallels there. You've got this kind of group of macho guys and this kind of monster that they have to face and that kind of thing. Yeah, it's interesting.
Great.
Yeah, a big thumbs up there for The Ritual. And finally, we're this is the most modern we're going to possibly get on this podcast, because this movie came out about a month ago, 2018, straight onto Netflix. What have we got?
We've got Calibre by Matt Palmer.
Reckon you can take down a deer?
Probably not, no. Not everyone can do it.
I'm going to let you take this one because I think I give way too much away in my
your plot.
Yeah, okay, my little synopsis.
Yes, because I think, as we'll discuss in a minute, I think the less you know about this, the better. So I'm just going to read the IMDb synopsis for this one, which basically reads: 2 lifelong friends head up to an isolated Scottish Highlands village for a weekend hunting trip, but nothing could prepare them for what followed. So there you go, and that's all it. And
boom!
That's
all you need.
Yeah, which I think is nice, and I think so again, classic folky tropes of 2 guys. They're kind of much more kind of city slicker types. They go into the forest, they go into the woods.
Yeah,
you've got creepy locals in the local pub.
Of course, they are very much family, and they would do anything to protect each other.
And there's a straight away a moment of kind of hostility as soon as these 2 guys walk in.
Not quite welcomed with smiles. Yes.
You've also got, again in the vein of The Ritual, this brilliant like kind of backdrop of these 2 guys that's introduced at the beginning, where it's kind of like our main character doesn't really want to have to go on this hunting trip with his mate, but
he's got a pregnant wife.
He's got a pregnant wife. He kind of obviously has grown up, but his childhood mate is still this kind of lad who still wants to hang out as bros and do stupid things and do drugs and it's and also there's this kind of, they hint at kind of things that have gone on in their past where they've had to stick up for each other or be there for each other, and there's all these kind of things, like really interesting things that pay off throughout the movie, aren't there?
Totally.
And then shit really goes down, doesn't it?
This is the thing. I loved this so much. It really blew my mind.
Me too.
But this is the thing. We can't talk too much about it because I really need everyone to watch it.
Yeah. It's on
so
Netflix.
Good.
You need to go and watch
and
it.
And it really, really, really pays off. And it's that one of the wonderful things about folk horror is you can't decide what side you're on.
Yes, exactly.
That's one of my favourite things. You are put really in the middle. You are the referee.
It's so morally grey, isn't it? Yeah.
And you see both sides' argument, and it makes you think, what would I do?
Yeah.
And this film, more than any other of any of the list, really tore me.
Me too.
For which team I wanted to play for.
I couldn't agree more. And it's in the, again, we've talked about this a lot, the kind of, the kind of fantastical films or the real life ones. For me, these kind of movies like Calibre will always scare me more, because I believed everything that happened to these characters, and I believe this could have happened, and this could have happened. What would I do if this happened to me?
Totally.
How would I react? What would I do? It's horrible. It's proper nightmarish scenario.
It is. I mean, the event happens 20 minutes in, and the tension ramps every single scene from then on.
Yeah.
Every single scene.
Yeah. Definitely. And what we can say about it is that it's got everything you want as a kind of hardened horror fan as well. I mean, it's very character based, but it's got gore, it's got proper fright, it's got suspense, it's got really nasty, and it's just got a lot of psychological kind of turmoil, hasn't it?
It'll fuck you up.
Yeah. And you've got these 2 lead characters played by Jack Lowden and Martin McCann, who are both excellent at
Stunning
what they do.
Performances.
And I really especially loved Tony Curran, who played the character of Logan, who is one of the main kind of locals, who's kind of the leader of the locals, who is, again, going back to what you were just saying about you don't know how you feel about these characters one way or the other. He's fascinating,
and his morals are really interesting in it. But he's one of those people, what he says goes in the town.
100%.
Nothing happens without his say-so.
Yes. It's a really great, in some ways, a really interesting companion to The Ritual. They're very
great
similar,
that they're on the list next to each other,
Yeah, and I think, what I will say, we're not going to give anything away about the story, but I think if you're not the type of person that's a fan of The Ritual, it's actually a monster, then maybe Calibre is more for you. I think it's a bit more grounded, isn't it?
Yeah, the men are the monsters.
Yeah, exactly. The men are the monsters. But that's all we should say about that. But as we say, that is also available on Netflix, definitely, and it's just come out, and I feel like there's not been a lot of talk about it, but it's really good.
Great. Do it.
Amazing. So there you go. That's our 10. I'm going to run through them all again. So you've got The Village from 2004. You've got Calvaire from 2004 as well. Hot Fuzz from 2007. Wakewood from 2009. The Hallow from 2015. The Wailing from 2016. Pyewacket from 2017. The Ritual, also from 2017. And Calibre from 2018. That's quite a nice, broad list.
Wow.
I feel like there's something for everyone there.
Yeah, but I feel like
list.
I've just been watching Dead Dogs and Kids for 2 weeks.
Yeah. So if you had to pick one favourite to recommend there on that list, what would be yours?
I mean, my head is telling me it's Calibre because I just think it is an exceptional film and an exceptional piece of filmmaking in terms of the tension and how it makes the audience member feel. But I really love the Hallow.
Yeah, you're definitely the Hallow.
14-year-old in me just is hands up for the Hallow.
Yes, I would agree. I'd say Calibre, definitely, but I admire the Wailing for just everything it does and everything it throws in and everything it manages to achieve as well. Yeah.
Oh, then Calvaire. Oh, do you know what? It's
Calvaire.
too hard.
I really do think I need to do a proper discussion on Calvaire at some point because that is a fascinating film as well. Really, really good. You know, obviously we've got our core list of 10 there. There are other titles that we haven't really talked about, and just out of interest, you know, things like, for example, the Blair Witch sequels.
Yes.
Which two movies. You're like, yes, I'm ready.
Go on.
I just wanted to ask you about them. Are you a fan? Because we've mentioned Blair Witch already so far.
Well, the Blair Witch, the film, the newest one,
2016 one.
2016, which was one of those films that did that fashionable thing of not being announced when it was being filmed.
Yes,
it's a surprise movie.
Yes.
Yeah, it was just The Woods. That's what it originally called, and they say, "Ha, look, it's Blair Witch."
Yes.
It's all right.
Yeah, not good. Not good.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the one bit I really do like about that is the sort of time loop element of it, where you know they bump into people and say it's been 20 minutes and they're like, no, it's been 4 days.
Yes.
That always messes up my head. I like that sort of stuff.
There's because the whole point of the original Blair Witch was that it was kind of disorientating and stuff. And, you know, So
those elements. But look, I'm not going to go into it. Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. The reason people hated it, I think, is because it changed the form from the first one.
Yes.
Just listen. If you don't like it, if you saw it 20 years ago, nearly.
Yeah,
it must be.
It's 2000. So
2000, nearly 20 years ago. Just go back, have another look, and then find me at Mr. Stevie Webb on Twitter and tell me what you think.
Interesting. I do need to give it another watch. I haven't seen it since 2000.
Right.
Didn't like it.
No, me neither.
I really should give it another watch. So So you've seen it since and like it?
Yeah, I like it. It's mind twisty. It's clever. I think the reason, as I said, everyone didn't like it, it's just not the Blair Witch. It's
and actually now that
they use video quite cleverly in it, I'll say that.
Yes, and now that we've had this other Blair Witch sequel, which is much more a conventional sequel to the Blair Witch Project, in that it's a found footage film in the woods.
Yeah.
And actually, I hated that so much that now I'm kind of reconsidering. Maybe I should give Book of Shadows another go, because at least it was so different and doing something new, which is what the original Blair Witch Project was all about as well, pushing the boundaries of, you know, whereas Blair Witch felt very formulaic. Yeah,
so if Blair Witch served any purpose, it's to make you go and watch Book of Shadows.
Yeah, exactly. Reconsider the original sequel.
Give it a go.
Definitely. Amazing. And just broadly speaking then, across the whole spectrum, do you have a favourite folk horror?
Well, I mean, if we're considering Texas Chainsaw as a folk horror, it's got to be. I mean, there is no other answer.
Yeah. Correct answer. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I loved your episode on it, and you know it is a perfect film.
It is a perfect film, and
that and The Wizard of Oz are perfect.
yes, they're the only two.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Well, that's it. Well, thank you so much for joining me again, Stevie. If people want to find you out there, where can they find you on social media, that kind of thing?
Yeah, Twitter and Instagram at Mr. Stevie Webb.
Amazing. And what we'll do is we'll pop a little list on Letterboxd with all of those films so that people don't have to remember them all in their head. Amazing. Stevie, thank you so much.
Thanks, buddy.
And that's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening, and a big thank you to my guest, Stevie Webb. We got to cover some absolute gems together there. Now, if you missed any of those titles that we mentioned in that list, don't worry, I will be posting a Letterboxd list where you can check out the 10 movies that we recommended and find out where you can watch them all. So please do subscribe to us on Letterboxd. We're at Evolution Pod. But what did you think of this week's show? What do you think of those movies we suggested? Are there any other glaring omissions? Any other big folk horrors that we've not yet covered that you wish we had? Get in touch. The email address is evolutionofhorror@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter at evolutionpod, or on Facebook. That's facebook.com/evolutionofhorror. So next week, well, we've got a kind of double whammy of treats for you in the next week, because one of those films we mentioned in our list this week was the brilliant found footage movie The Borderlands. Now, you may or may not know that The Borderlands was in fact produced by by our very own Jen Handorf. Jen Handorf has been on the podcast a few times, and also her husband happens to be Dan Martin. He is the co-host of the Arrow Video podcast, and of course he too has been on this podcast a whole bunch of times, most recently discussing Ben Wheatley's folk movies with me. Now, both of those two worked on the Borderlands together. So, as a bonus episode that's going to be dropping over the next few days, I sit down and chat to Jen and Dan together about the Borderlands, about the movie in general, about making the movie, and about its reaction and its influence since it's come out. Not only that, the two of them are working on a very exciting project together for October, something called Fright Nightclub. You may have heard a bit about it online or on social media, but they are going to be giving us the scoop of this new immersive horror experience that they're going to be launching in Bermondsey in London next month. So stay tuned for that episode dropping at some point in the next few days. Meanwhile, next week, for our next official episode of the Evolution of Folk Horror, it's going to be our last two folk horror movie in-depth reviews. Next week, I am going to be joined by the brilliant Rihanna Dillon, and we are going to be discussing two movies, one from 2015 and one from 2017. Both of them are brutal, terrifying, brilliant, subversive twists on the Hicksploitation format, and I could think of no two better movies to finish off the series with. So we are going to be discussing Jeremy Saulnier's Green Room from 2015 and Jordan Peele's Oscar-winning horror movie Get Out from 2017. So join us next week for all of this and more on the Evolution of Horror.